Hi, this is Sarah Horn from the Career Development Office at UWF. I'm going to be talking in this presentation about how to tell stories in interviews and why that can be so useful. So let's get started. So to start off with, telling stories is really beneficial just on the most basic level because humans are naturally drawn and interested in stories. So it's a good way of capturing the interest of the person who's interviewing you. And it's one of the best ways that you have to illustrate your soft skill set in an interview. Just a reminder, soft skills are usually like interpersonal skills. They're not things that you've taken significant time to actively learn. Like you probably haven't taken a class on a lot of them. Examples are problem solving, critical thinking, teamwork, communication, those types of things. They're things that are kind of byproducts of experiences and classes that you've taken, but they're likely not things that you've been intentionally taught about. And it can also act as evidence to those qualifications. So stories are really valuable. They help create interest in your interviewer and illustrate your skill set. So telling stories can occur in a lot of situations. One of the best ways or reasons to tell a story is that you're asked a behavioral interview question. There is a video available on that, so I would really recommend looking into behavioral interviewing. It's also a good idea to tell stories when you're talking about yourself or your past, like maybe you're talking about the moment that you are inspired to pursue the career path that you're currently pursuing. That's a great opportunity to tell a story. And to supplement your answer to questions that ask about qualities. So talking about strengths or why you're best for this position can always use an example to supplement your answer. So a story is a really good way to add, excuse me, a story is a really good way to add some interest to that answer. So the method that I recommend when telling stories is to use the STAR method. STAR stands for situation, task, action, and results. The situation is just setting the stage, laying the groundwork for the story, kind of starting with the who, what, when, and where of the story. The T is for task, which is describing the problem or the task that you are facing. Oops. The task that you are facing. The action is whatever effort or action you took to address the task at hand, and then the result is the outcome of your actions. So here's an example of a STAR story. So this is being presented as if someone had asked you the question, tell me about a time when you had to resolve a conflict with a coworker. So the situation could be, I was working as a server at a restaurant at Pensacola Beach last summer, and we had a high volume of guests because of the large number of vacationers in the area. So that's the situation, kind of setting the stage, telling me briefly what the situation was. Then the task is the problem that this person has to solve. So one evening, one of my coworkers began covering tables that were assigned to me for the night, and this affected my ability to earn tips, and it's also against the rules to cover other servers' tables without approval. So this is the issue. The person is encountering this conflict with their coworker, and the problem needs to be resolved. So the action that they took is, rather than becoming angry and lashing out at the coworker, I approached the situation with a curious attitude. I approached the coworker and asked if there had been a misunderstanding about our table assignments. It turned out that he had misread the assignments and took my tables by mistake. So it turned out to be a non-issue. So the result was that the coworker apologized and the issue was resolved. And then the person adds, I'm glad I didn't let my emotions get the better of me because this protected our working relationship and it did not cause a scene in front of our guests. So by approaching the situation in this way, the result was obviously positive. So again, we've got the situation, task, action, and result. So just to recap, the STAR method stands for situation, task, action, and result. It's just a sequence of details that you share when telling a story. It's also really valuable because it helps keep your story on task. It helps you stay on task, and it's also a very results-oriented way of telling stories, and employers are always interested in the results of your efforts. A few tips for preparing for STAR stories or preparing to tell stories in interviews. When you're preparing for an interview, anticipate the qualities that the company desires for the person who's going to hold that position. So you can kind of learn about this by looking at the company values, maybe their mission, reading through the job description, and then also there are some websites that offer reviews of the company's culture online. And an example of that is Glassdoor.com. Then it's a good idea to prepare stories that address those qualities in advance. And I would really recommend writing them down. So thinking about stories where you had to overcome any challenge, whether that was an interpersonal or maybe it was an academic challenge that you were overcoming, I would just write them down and then practice telling those stories without that piece of paper where you've written them down with another person. So that's what extemporaneously, that means talking kind of off the cuff, talking without a lot of basically talking in an unscripted way. So then practice telling those stories extemporaneously after you've kind of thought them through and had a chance to write them down. So just to review, it's a good idea to tell stories when you're asked those behavioral interview questions, which usually start with, tell me about a time when. When you're talking about your past, it's also a good time to tell stories and also to supplement your answer to questions. So if you say that, for example, your greatest strength is communication, it would be worth sharing a story that demonstrates that that is your strength. So again, STAR stands for situation, task, action, and result. And I think that's all I have for you today. I hope this was helpful. And if you have any questions, please let me know.